Alright, so I was recently given a really awesome opportunity to work with the new Shogun Cuts created by Jesse James and sold by TiCon Industries. The only stipulations I was given is I have to actually build something, and I have to provide very honest feedback about what I think about it. No fanboy stuff. So here we go. Some things that I learned that you guys should definitely know, and what I actually think about these things, how I like them, what I do and don't like, what I got out of it, etc., etc., etc. Let's just get right onto it. This is an awesome build. So I definitely wanted to build a chopper exhaust for this episode, but I didn't have one on hand at the time of shooting, and I didn't know of anybody else who needed one. So I reached out to my buddy Adam at O School Choppers, who hooked me up with Andre, who took one look at the Shogun Cuts and said, "Bro, we gotta get this done." So after building his exhaust once in the summer of 2017, it's back again for me to do it all out of Shogun Cuts. So first, let's get this off. Now we'll take the locking ring off the flange, pop it off, and get it ready to transfer over. Now I do have an episode entirely based on how to build these Harley head flanges for the Evo engine. Make sure you click on that video card and check it out as soon as it's done. I'll also have a link down in the description. As soon as I have it all set up, we'll get it set onto the actual engine itself, get it tightened down with some fresh gaskets, and get it ready for our Shogun Cuts. Now from the presentation standpoint, having these individually packaged and boxed with their own foam is really cool, but it makes for a really long time unboxing these, so while I'm getting all 60 of them out of the packages, let's talk about the actual pie cuts themselves. Now each Shogun Cut is investment cast out of stainless steel. This ensures the ultimate in accuracy through the casting process and durability from the stainless steel. The genius of the design is that they are modular, meaning that they can be interlocked thanks to one side being recessed, the other side having a lip on it. That means that you can actually stick them together, rotate them and assemble them, and create a mock-up design before you actually weld them together. Now the weight has always been a big issue when it comes to talking about these things. So a standard pie cut weighs about 0.6 ounces, while a Shogun Cut, being much heavier, weighs 1.6 ounces. But that's when we get into our first debate and actually explain all of it. Now realistically speaking, 1 ounce of difference is not that much. Now I know that when we add all of this up together, all 59 pieces plus the rest of it, we get plus 59 ounces plus the rest of it. But remember, this is weight difference. The system that's already on there versus the new system that we're building, they're going to calculate the difference to it, and that's how much additional that's going off the side of the bike, or whatever that you're building. It's going to add it up, right? But it's actually not that much considering what's already on there versus what's going on there. Now I weighed both pieces, both assemblies, and you'll see that at the end of the video. We'll calculate the difference and show you what is actually going additionally onto the bike. You realize it's not enough to make you topple over. In fact, it's very small, but we'll get into that. Now the other argument on this one that I have to bring up is the price perspective. Now a stack of those individual pie cuts that are made out of 16 gauge tube of the same size are a lot less than just one of these Shogun Cuts. But at the same time, I almost didn't have enough footage to make this video because I literally flew through the fabrication on this one. So there's a really interesting side that you guys definitely got to consider. So let's actually knock this one out. Here's the build on that one, and we'll get into all the rest of this good stuff in a little bit. Now each one of my head flanges is an 1 3/4 OD, and the inside of these is a nominal 1 3/4 ID, which means I can slide this right over the top of that head flange. But I don't need the recessed section of it, so I'm basically going to knock it down with the grinder and throw a fat taper on it. Now when I get ready to weld it, I'll actually put a nice little weave on there for decoration, even though it probably won't be seen. But either way you slice it, we'll slide it onto there, kind of get it in a general idea of about where I want it to go, and then I'm grabbing these Shogun Cuts in groups of 3 to snap on and interlock to the rest of them. Now unfortunately they do weigh a bit more, and you can't necessarily lock all of them. They don't have the strength to hold all of them up, but the beauty of it is that they do interlock, which means you can actually snap them together, rotate them individually wherever you need to go, and then you still have 2 hands free basically. You just can't do this with regular pie cuts. It's near impossible. So I decided the best plan of action on this one is to go in groups of 3, tack them all up in individual groups of 3, so that way I can hold all of them together and I don't have to worry about clocking all of them individually. I'm just going to clock them by group, which will keep the uniformity to it. So each time that I set them up, I'm going to go ahead and throw a tack down on there, clock it, make sure everything's good, holding up my straight section the entire way through it, and then just generally eyeballing it, making sure everything's good. Now I'm only throwing 1 tack down on there just in case I got to break them all off, but this is a breeze when it comes to it, because you just, like I said, you can't do this with regular pie cuts. You can only kind of eyeball it and guess about where you need to go. But with these, since they interlock, you literally just throw it up there and just bam, tack it right there. And you know, if you need to make a small adjustment, go for it. And like I said, the beauty of this is that with regular pie cuts, you have to actually line them and tack them all up individually and then hope you get it somewhat close. With these, with the Shogun Cuts, they all interlock and you just kind of go accordingly, which majorly reduces your fab time. But one kind of a, bummer on this one is when I found out you have to make that slight adjustment just to get your alignment just right on the pie cuts by making a partial clocking, the scallops do go out of alignment, but you can chase it down with something like a carbide burr tool or maybe a sanding drum or something like that, which I intend to chase those out to make it look a little bit more even on those scallops, and you can't tell that I had to make a slight adjustment. But as soon as I have the straight section lined up, I'm going to go work on the turn down, which again, I'm just going to grab a handful of pie cuts. In this case, I got 5 of them to interlock, and then I'm going to grab another section of them just to kind of get my turn down going in the right direction. Now, I'm not going to finish this rear pipe the entire way through. I'm just going to get it tacked up here so I can go work on the front pipe while having the rear pipe already set there in place so I can reference it when I build the front one. I want to make sure that these two line up right next to each other before I get to the actual exits and reveals. Now onto the front pipe. All we really got to do is get our takeoff flange in place, get it tightened down. I have one Shogun Cut already locked on there, ready to go. Quick fit check, but I'm going to grab as many as possible. In this case, I've got a grand total of 15 Shogun Cuts in one friggin' hand, or at least all set up ready to go. Now I can hold them in one hand, and I made an Instagram post about me doing it, but to get all these lined up and easily clocked up and set up right where I want them to be, I'm going to use 2 hands here, get them locked into the top, make any adjustments, little tiny amounts of movement here, clock it there, rotate there, and as soon as I have it lined up in the flow in the direction that I want to, with the other hand, I'm going to grab a hold of a marker and make a reference mark on it. That's all I had to do. This was like literally the fastest I have ever set up any kind of pie cut exhaust. Like, that was literally the easiest thing in the world. The entire front pipe, just for some facts here while I get it all tacked together, the entire front pipe was built in 6 minutes, or at least it was mocked up in 6 minutes total. That is insane. You cannot do that with regular pie cuts, and that's the beauty of these Shogun Cuts, is how they're interlocking design. You can literally just stick it all together, adjust it, and work your design and get your flow going, and then just tack them. Now, if you don't like the design or like the way that they flowed or how they moved or anything like that, you can just simply rotate one or clock one or move it the other direction. Like, this is a total time saver, and it's absolutely insane. So at this point, it's just a matter of finishing these off. Now, of course, I'm going to need to make a couple of slight adjustments with those fractions of a clocking reference, like we just need a little bit to turn, twist, maneuver. Now, one thing that totally caught me off guard is the 180 finish that's on these Shogun Cuts actually creates a bit of an optical illusion. So as you're looking at it, you see the scallops and the shadows and the reflections that come off of it. It does kind of mess with you when you go from looking at the scallops and then flipping them to the inward side where there is no scallop. It does tweak your vision just a little bit. It looks like everything's crooked, it kind of messes it up, but take your measurements, make sure that you got everything right, because it's really gonna mess with you. Like right now, these things look crooked as can be, but realistically speaking, they're not. That was one thing that kind of messed with me while I was at it. So just, make sure that you're paying attention to your measurements and the flow, and look at it from as many angles as possible, because it literally kind of trips you up just a little bit, because some sides have the scallop, some sides don't. So either way, we decided the final reveal on this one is going to be a double stagger, and we want to flip one of those Shogun Cuts on each side. We're going to flip it over to reveal the scallops on the top of it. And I'm just going to get all of that tacked in place after I have all of this reveal all finished up, and we'll get it ready for welding. Now, just like every other time you have to weld, preparation is key to ensuring you get a good, solid, nice, clean weld with a uniform finish on it. So I'm going to start with a red surface prep pad and some acetone. This is going to scuff it down, clean it up, and make sure that our finish is completely uniform. After that, I'm going to grab a clean rag and wipe it down with more acetone. Now note that I am wearing gloves on this one, because any kind of oils or dirt or anything that gets on the stainless when it gets hot will stay on the stainless. Now I'm going to back purge these. Now, there might not need to be a back purge on it, and there's really no saying. I don't know if I'm going to get through both layers, because remember, we have the outside layer and then we have that interlocking ring on the inside. I don't think, with the amperage that I'm welding at, which is somewhere around 70 amps, I don't think I'm going to get through both sides, but I'm not taking any chances because the metal is going to get hot on the inside above that reactive temperature. So I set my purge line up. It's a minimal amount. I think I have about maybe 7 to 10 CFH pumping into this tube as I weld it, but I don't think I'm going to get through, but either way, not taking any chances. It's better that you purge anyway. Better being safe than sorry. Now, the other thing that I encountered on this one is every great once in a while, being that these are cast, something's going to pop at you. You might hit a bad spot, so just kind of be prepared for it. If you do, just kind of back it up a little step, fill it back in, and get going again. You won't really notice it. The biggest thing that I had that I did not encounter for is distortion. Now, since these have to have a tolerance to interlock and stick together, they are loose, but they are not super tight and they're not super loose. They're basically right in the middle of it. They're enough to hold them together, but distortion is relatively high. So I would definitely advise doing more tacks than what I did. I think I have an average of about 2 or 3 tacks per Shogun cut. I would say go to about 5 or 6 to make sure that they are definitely locked in place, because I was battling distortion and that kind of made my weld quality suffer just a little bit. These are not as precise as I usually like to have them. They're just a little bit less. So what I would ultimately suggest is buying a few extra pieces so you could practice welding on them, or just get some ahead of time before you actually get the job. It's a really good idea to practice and make sure that you know which way they're going to move, which way they're going to distort, how they weld, and all the rest of that good stuff. It was a battle for me. I'm not going to lie. A little tough, but I think the next time around, bet you 10 to 1 I'll nail it exactly where I need to and exactly where I want, with the quality and consistency that I'm usually like to keep on all of my welds. I'm pretty sure I'll have it by the next time around, but definitely grab a couple of extra pieces for you to practice on, and make sure that you have multiple tacks on these pieces before you get to actually welding all of them. Alright, so here it is, the moment of truth. Just before I started welding these on social media, I posted up how long do you think it's going to take. I said, place your bets, see how long you think it's going to take me to weld all of these Shogun Cuts together. Now, there were some fantastic guesses, and there were some that absolutely put me in hysterical laughing tears because they were about as realistic as it gets. But here's the official result. It took 5 hours, 40 minutes, and 32 seconds. Now, the first person to guess closest to that number was a guy called Rick Roberts on Facebook, who guessed 5 hours and 42 minutes. So, congratulations to Rick. You have won the last Shogun Cut that I did not use in this episode. It's all yours. Just send me your information. Now, let's put all of this back together. Let's fire it up, because you've got to hear how sexy this thing sounds. Now, as promised, let's take a weight of each one of them. We'll start with the original assembly that I built a year before this one. Have a look here. We got 4 pounds, 10 ounces. Not very much. Pretty typical for an exhaust system. Next, we'll line up our Shogun Cuts. Get all of these both set up here. Now, both of these are without the flanges. But they were both as assembled, basically, again, without the flanges on them. So these ones come out to a grand total of 7 pounds, 10 ounces. That's a difference of 3 pounds. That's not very much. So now let's tackle the other portion of the gripes on this one while I reassemble everything, and that's the cost of the Shogun Cuts. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was put off initially by the cost. It's quite a bit more than your regular pie cuts. But when I realized the amount of savings it produces due to that interlocking design and being able to load up so many of them at once and just let the flow happen, you realize how much time you're saving on the fabrication side of things. Now, your average system like this out of regular pie cuts would take somewhere between 6 and 10 hours, depending on the complexity of the system, how many cuts you have, and which way you want to go with it, and of course your experience level. I built this entire system in less than 3 hours. Full mock-up, ready to weld, back at my shop on the table, less than 3 hours. That is absolutely insane. Now, the initial cost is a lot higher, but the amount of time saved on the mock-up side makes it come out about even, so realistically it's about the same price as any other. Now, I've got to get these two tied together for a little bit of strength, so I'm just taking a couple bolts with a strap between the two of them, just to lock them all down, get them nice and tight. They're hidden on the backside, and now we let Adam from Old School Choppers take over and get this baby fired up. Now that was a super awesome sound that I have never heard before from any other motorcycle, especially one that I've ever built for. And trust me, I love to chase that sound. And I think it's kind of unique actually to the Shogun Cuts itself, related to the density of the metal and of course that low pressure section in that straight, plus the two different lengths of them, all the rest of that good stuff. Maybe it's just unique to that, maybe unique to the Shogun Cuts. But either way, that's about going to wrap it up for this episode. Now, remember that if you start working with some of these Shogun Cuts, grab a few extra ones. That's about the only advice I can give because you'll need some practice in working with them. They're just a little bit different. But either way, thank you so much to TiCon Industries for sending me these out. Thanks to Jesse James for creating such an awesome product. I absolutely love them. I'd really love to see these things used in like a header or a turbo manifold. I think that would look really sick. So if you guys ever get a chance to do that before I do, make sure you tag me, send me a link, do whatever you got to do because I've got to see that one, especially if I don't get to it first. So either way, I want to thank you guys for watching as always. If you need to get in contact with us, hit us up on the fabricationseries.com website, Instagram at the.fabricator, or facebook.com/thefabricatorseries. Make sure you subscribe and you ring that bell for all the extra exclusive content and giveaways and more going on in the YouTube community tab. So we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks again.